there's a film Om Shanti Om by Shahrukh Khan where he says तुमको अगर कोई चीज चाहिए होती है तो पूरी कायनात उसको मिलाने में लग जाती है. Something like that happened with us. This is a question that we always get asked. Why not Bangalore? Why not Hyderabad? We came here and then the entire environment kept us here. When new teams come together or when new people come together, typically group formation theoretically will go through 4 stages: forming, storming, norming, performing. When your intent is to build an organization, you don't want to care about the rest of the things.
Then you got the mother of all investors, Reliance, to invest in you.
Mother or father or whatever it is. So robots are going to become more prevalent. They will be everywhere. And it is not necessary that the robot always has to be in a humanoid form. I feel that there are many applications where robotics can be used apart from industry and warehouse automation where we are already present. And I'm not talking about the usual applications like defense, surveillance, security, any other odd application that you can think of, there will be a robot for it. Why do we need a labor-intensive model to compete with China? Why can't we have robots? Why can't we build robots faster? Why can't we build robots that are more efficient, more intelligent than them? That is also going to create new economic models for us.
Hello and welcome to the Escape Velocity podcast by Outlook Business, where we talk to the movers, shakers, thinkers and doers of the tech and startup ecosystem. Today we have with us Satish Shukla, co-founder of Adverb, a robotics company based out of Noida. Welcome Satish to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So it would be great to start off by understanding what made you start a robotics company back in 2016, and why did you choose a city like Noida for it and not Bangalore or Pune or Hyderabad?
Sure. So all the co-founders of Adverb, we were all working with Asian Paints, and I joined Asian Paints in 2013. The rest of the co-founders were working before that, and I joined Asian Paints at the Rohtak factory. So this factory was one of the most automated and probably one of the largest paint factory in the whole world. And as a part of the team, we were building factories for Asian Paints, and these factories would be highly automated, have state-of-the-art automation right from the time the raw material enters till the paint gets packed into a pail or a box and pushed out of the factory. There was no human touch at all. So these were very state-of-the-art factories, and we were all part of the team who were building these factories and automating these factories. So in 2016, while working together, we felt that the time was right for us to start in this industrial automation, warehouse automation domain because of a host of 4-5 factors. So first, the geo movement had already happened. So there was a time when you would check your data every now and then whether my pack has expired or not, but Mukesh Ambani had changed all of that by giving free data to everyone. And because of this, e-commerce had started penetrating to every nook and corner of the country in 2016. And typically these e-commerce companies would need warehouses at different nodes, and automation, because they're handling a huge amount of SKU, plus the order frequency can vary depending on the sales they are pushing, or it can come from any place. Second, organized retail was also going into every nook and corner of the country. So this was a time when in Rohtak, we would have one Mishal Megamart and 2 Reliance Fresh. In cities like Ujjain and Jabalpur, we would have 2 Reliance Fresh. So organized retail was going everywhere, right? And they would also typically need warehouses because they would need to fulfill their stores every night with the right SKUs because then the opportunity will be lost, correct? If you do not have the right SKU on the shelf. GST was being implemented, so because of GST, we anticipated that companies which were earlier having warehouses because of tax purposes, they will consolidate and have larger boxes, bigger boxes to accommodate actual logistics and supply chain. This was also a time when government was talking about 2 things extensively. One was Make in India, and if Make in India had to be successful, there had to be automation companies that could support companies who are automating in India, and then Startup India. And there was a lot of encouragement from the government, and this was a time when a lot of startups were getting funded. A lot of startups were coming into niche areas. Now we only knew industrial automation and warehouse automation to that extent. So that's why we felt that the time was right. There will be a right demand. There will be a demand for a company which could make products for automating in India. And that's how we took our journey from becoming as users to creators of robots and automation systems. Now, since we are based out of Rohtak, North obviously was more comfortable for all of us. So when I say North means Delhi NCR was more comfortable for us. And at that time, we decided to be in Noida because we felt that the cost of living per se in this city was less compared to Gurgaon. And you had to save every penny when you're starting up, right? There was also a good MSME base in Noida, is what we saw, where they could manufacture our components. So there were injection molding players, there were machine shops, tool rooms, etc., who could manufacture components that we would need for our automation systems. And then, so these were some of the factors that we took into consideration while we started from Noida, but that was in the early stages. Subsequently, when we started, so there's a film Kal kya Om Shanti Om by Shah Rukh Khan, where he says कि if you want something very badly, मतलब तुमको अगर कोई चीज़ चाहिए होती है तो पूरी कायनात उसको मिलाने में लग जाती है. Something like that happened with us when we moved to Noida. So then, Honorable Chief Minister of the state, Yogi Adityanath, he became the chief minister, and then there was a big advertisement in newspaper, Startup UP, and they were giving plots in Noida, Greater Noida for startups, and we applied for it. We just applied randomly, right? Because you apply, so just like you do cold calling for sales, you do cold calling for all these activities as well, because we were a startup which had revenue of less than 10 crores at that time, so we were a nobody literally. So we applied, and then the application actually got through. We got a call from Noida authority. They were shocked that there's a robotics company which is operating from Noida. So they took our interview, etc. They came to assess our facility, and they saw that actually robots and automation systems were being built, made. So this was an office that we had in Noida, a small office, which was like a single floor where we were doing everything on that floor. So it was not like an office typically. It was more like a workshop from where we were operating. So we were doing assembly, we were doing R&D, we were doing marketing, we were doing sales. Everything was happening here, customer meets. So you can assemble that kind of a setup. So that's where so they saw the setup. Then we got a plot in sector 156 along with different government benefits from UP. And that's where we built our first manufacturing facility, which we called Bot Valley.
But you're saying you just applied for a government scheme for a plot of land and you got it.
Yes.
That happens in India.
Yes. So the story doesn't stop there.
Okay.
So we got we inaugurated Bot Valley in 2021. This was a time when just after inauguration, the second wave came. So we had nothing to do with it. So we inaugurated Bot Valley. We all shifted there. Then because of COVID, what actually happened was that there was a huge demand for robotics and automation because of a couple of factors primarily when I look back. First was people did not want, so businesses did not want people in their facilities because at that time there could be lockdown anywhere, there would be a COVID outbreak. So they wanted minimum number of human touches in their warehouses or factories. Second, they could not even rely if people would turn up or not, right? So there were a lot of automation orders. Second, this was also an easy money policy, easy liquidity policy by US Fed, which drove sort of easy money globally. And a lot of e-commerce companies, so there was a shift from offline to online, and the companies had to meet this demand. So they were putting up huge capacities, extrapolating this demand for next 4 or 5 years. So we got huge amount of orders during COVID time.
Okay.
So we had to put up a second factory to meet this demand. And then as normal logic, we again approached UP government, and then we were again allotted a land in Greater Noida in groundbreaking ceremony. And within 1 year of that land allotment, we were able to commission our second factory, Botverse. So this was again an example of public-private participation per se in a different way, where all the clearances, all the infrastructure was given to us at lightning speed. And we were also able to build a factory and commission it within 12 months from the date of allotment. And then this factory, Botverse, which is one of the world's largest mobile robot manufacturing facility, mobile robot, not mobile, mobile robot manufacturing facility, and which is also a landmark in sustainable manufacturing, was inaugurated by Honorable Chief Minister of the State, Sri Yogi Adityanath. So that was about the second factory that we built. What also happened was, so Sangeet, who's our CEO, was an employee of GAIL. And then in 2017, government gave this mandate to all the PSUs under Startup India that you invest in startups which makes sense for you. So let's say if it's a BHEL, just hypothetically, BHEL, they would invest in component manufacturers who can provide supply to BHEL, right? So that kind of thing. So they invest in startups that make more business sense for you because PSUs were cash rich. So GAIL started this initiative called Punk. So again, we read it in the newspaper and then we went on the website and we applied. And GAIL invested in us. So that's how we were, probably I gave the example of Shah Rukh Khan in that dialogue. So we wanted this company to be successful and we really came with our all heart and soul. And that's why I think rest of the things worked up and everything worked up, and that's how we were in Noida. And this is a question that we always get asked. Why not Bangalore? Why not Hyderabad? Okay, we probably are missing out the Bangalore bro culture, but nothing against those two cities, and they have a good ecosystem. But that's how we started. We came here, and then the entire environment kept us here, right? And that's why we are still here.
But tell me something. If you are in Bangalore, then does this attrition affect you more, because there are a lot more companies trying to poach a lot more of your talent, whereas in Noida probably there are not so many tech companies, and so is the attrition less, or is the cost of keeping people within the company lesser?
So the cost of keeping people is not lesser. There is also a challenge that we used to face earlier. It has reduced considerably compared to earlier times, because to be very honest, reputation of Noida has also improved. In general, law and order, in general, the way the city was earlier, it was, when I came, I remember it was a ghost town. And there were a lot of incomplete projects. But today it's not that state. There's a lot of infrastructure that has come up. So the cost of keeping the talent does not get reduced. In attrition, because there's not a lot of people who want to shift from Bangalore, Hyderabad, or Pune to Noida, right? So that challenge always remains. And then obviously there's a ecosystem there. So finding talent also becomes easy. Once you have talent, then there are a lot of factors through which you can retain talent. The first and the most important factor being good work, right? And compensation is not the only factor. But I won't say having here saves us any cost for talent, because in today's world, where there's internet. So imagine 20-25 years back, right? You would not have an internet. You would not know what is the market salary, right, for a job. Today you have internet, you have Glassdoor, you have Ambition Box, you have Payscale and all other things, and you have anonymous forums. You just go and search what is the kind of salary you need for a job, and you'll easily find the data points, right? So there's, with this kind of setup, the cost is not less per se. The cost, I think, remains essentially the same.
So I want to go back a bit to your founding story. Six of you starting a robotics company. First question is, six founders, how did that come to be? Because generally there are 2 or 3 founders. Did that create problems, any problems later? Because we saw in OpenAI with a lot of founders, what happened later. Sam Altman kind of was rounded up by the others and kind of fired. So I want to understand that, and I also want to understand that as a deep tech startup, if you're a robotics startup, you are quite deep into tech. How did you guys hit the ground running? How did you guys raise funding? I think that is something that a lot of deep tech startups care about and they are concerned about.
Sure. So I'll touch on my personal experience of first how the team came together. So see, a lot of credit actually goes to the earlier company with which we were working. There was a culture that was very secure. So integrity was one of the values that we had at the organization that we were working with, and integrity for us. So see, all of these words that typically organizations have their values could mean different thing to different people. But for us, integrity was meeting your commitment, and we had all worked in that culture. And So essentially, we had a sense of comfort while working with each other, right? When new teams come together or when new people come together, see, typically group formation theoretically will go through 4 stages: forming, storming, norming, performing. So first you will come together, then you will have conflicts, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, that becomes the norm. And then once the norm is accepted, the position of each member in the group is accepted, you start performing. In our case, that had already happened because we were already working in a structured environment with a certain set of values, and we found a sense of comfort with each other. That's why we came together, right? There was a certain camaraderie, a certain respect, a certain value system which all of us respected. That's why we came together and started. So that's why there was no friction. The roles were essentially decided. We had already seen each other performing in a group and in a structured business environment. So the roles were also very clear initially. And then I think what really played an important role was the intent was right. The intent was to build an organization, right? When your intent is to build an organization, you don't want to care about the rest of the things, right? You just want to care. There is only one principle with which you take the decision. What I am doing, is it helping me to build an organization? Is fighting with my co-founder helping me to build an organization? No. So the answer is very simple, right? So I think since we were not probably college pass outs or bunch of friends who had come together to start, we had already worked in a professional setup that helped us to maintain very respectful and professional boundaries. And I think that was a very...
How many years did you guys work together before starting up?
So I worked for 3.5 years with the group because I joined in 2013, but the group had worked for almost 7 to 8 years together, right? And I was the youngest member of the group. So collectively, there was a lot of trust between all of us, right? And we were working in a factory 6 days a week. You're spending more time with your colleagues than your family, right? Because you're working for 6 days a week, and in factories, typically work comes up on Sunday as well. Something or the other will come up. My father worked in a factory, so there were a lot of times on Sunday he would go for half an hour or 1 hour. So here also in Asian Paints there would be some call that you would get or some work which will get stuck on Saturday evening. So when you're spending so much time with each other, right, you become comfortable with people. And then I think our hearts and our intent were in the right place.
Got it. Also, the other question was, how did you guys start with, funding, attracting funding and customers in the first place? Because I think you guys had some revenue from the first year itself.
Yes.
For a deep tech startup, that is a huge thing.
Sure. So all of us were clear that we should remain profitable because we felt the essence of business was remaining profitable, especially at a small scale. Probably that's what our thought process was at that time, right or wrong, I don't know. So 2 things. So I'll touch both the points differently. First, investors, and second, customers. So our boss at Asian Paints was Jalesh Dani sir. So he's also he's from one of the promoter families of Asian Paints. And when we were leaving, he was considerate enough to say, if you need anything, just feel free to reach out. So we reached out and we told him that this is what we are building. We are doing automation, robotics. Again, I've never asked it from him, but I think he also had a certain comfort because the value system was same, right? He was also part of Asian Paints family. We were also part of Asian Paints family. So the value system essentially was same, and then there was a comfort and a trust factor that was very important, right? So we reached out to him, he visited us, and then he decided to invest. So that's how we got our first investment. So sort of our boss invested in us, with whom we were working, essentially.
You guys left the company en masse, 6 people, and then he invests in your startup. Wow.
So all of us left en masse. We left after some interval because we didn't want to leave en masse. And a couple of us had joined ITC just some time back, so they left from there. So for 2015 onwards we were having discussion कि start करना है. तो 2015 के बाद आप मान लीजिए कि en masse ही सब छोड़ के गए, right? But then he invested, he came on board, then Gail invested. Subsequently, he got more conviction in our business as he worked with us, because he was not your typical investor, right? He was not your typical VC investor or private equity investor where the objective, a lot of time in P, the objective is to maximize your output, right? And in VC, it's same because you're investing in hordes of businesses, only one or two will succeed. But he also was aligned to build a business from ground up. And he also played that role of mentoring and guiding us to a very large extent. And then I think along the way, he also built more conviction. Again, I've never asked. And then he only led the Series A.
Wow.
Right. So then he led the Series A round as well. And
who are the others? Any VCs there?
Yeah, so Gale invested. So Gale invested and then Gale exited later on. We gave them a good exit.
Wow.
And then Series B was led by Reliance.
Okay.
So we can touch upon that later of how that happened. In terms of customers, see, we were essentially working in Asian Paints, which is one of the, or probably the innovator in the paint industry or in entire supply chain industry, right? So my father worked in Birla Group, right? So even when Mr. Kumar Birla had to enter into paint, he essentially had to buy the entire Asian Paints team, right?
Yeah.
So he hired a lot of people from Asian Paints, and that speaks the quality of the team that was there, right? Not only about us, but for others, right? Essentially, if a billionaire and one of the richest person in the country has to come up in that sector, he has to go and essentially buy talent from his competitor. So that speaks about the volume of the quality of the team that was being built at Asian Paints. So a lot of our colleagues had joined other organizations and we started reaching out to them, and they helped us in connecting within their organizations or probably with their friends. And that's how we started meeting more people. Second, we also had a very good connect with the vendor base of automation systems, because we were purchasers or buyers, or we were the people who were installing these systems. So we also reached out to them, and through them we got a lot of contacts and we reached out to multiple players. And the third part was essentially cold calling. You just reach out, you sell yourself initially, because nobody knows the company, there is no brand. So we sold about the kind of projects that we had done, the experience that we had, and a lot of customers were ready to bet on us, and that's how the customer journey began.
So I'm trying to understand the first 1, 2, 3 years, you would have to invest in R&D, because the problem with deep tech startups is you have to invest in R&D, and then VCs say we can't wait for so long, and that's why they don't end up investing.
So that's why we did not have a VC on our investment cap table, right? That's why we had Jalad sir, who was probably.
But did you reach out to VCs? Did you try getting VC investment?
We reached out to a couple of VCs, but at the risk of being politically incorrect, they don't understand the business, to be very honest, right? See, how does a VC investment happen? First, there will be an analyst who will take your call. Right? Now, this analyst has zero experience of manufacturing, has never even gone to a factory floor. He's probably a pass out from 1-2 years. He or she is asking questions that might not even make sense, right? Second, so that's the first problem that I feel with the model. Second, typically, if you see, so VCs will invest with a lot of FOMO. So if there's a 10-minute delivery that has become successful, they'll start funding all the 10-minute Tom, Dick and Harrys. Right? If a Byju's has been successful, they'll start funding any e-learning or edtech, because they don't want to miss the train. So I think the kind of businesses that VCs invest are very different, right? And there has to be a glamour in the business. There has to be a trend in the business. So we were very clear. We don't want money on our cap table where half of their body is outside the gate, half of their body is inside the gate. मतलब आधा पैर बाहर है, आधा पैर अंदर है. If the first opportunity, exit कर लें, right? So that's where I think getting people like Jalaj or Gale on board helped us a lot, gave us a lot of time to build our own products and to grow as well.
But then you got the mother of all investors, Reliance, to invest in you. How did that happen?
Mother or father or whatever it is. So we were working with Reliance for automating their warehouses for JioMart business. And that's where they gave us an opportunity to design some innovative solutions along with their team and deploy. So we did almost 6 to 8 warehouses for them. And that's where a lot of trust got built with Reliance, because when you start working with a customer and there are repeat orders that come in, so obviously your solution has been successful to a certain extent, your products have started working, and then the customer is also getting more trust, right? Now again, so Reliance has it's a huge conglomerate, right? So they have Petchem, they have specialty chemicals, they have textiles, they have e-commerce, they have fashion, they have grocery. Today they have Campa Cola, right? So all these businesses would require very agile supply chain. And typically they would need to invest in technology for warehouse and industrial automation in their factories. And then they also had 5G, Jio, not only 5G, but the leading player in telecom. They only brought 5G, that's a reality. So, and we also wanted somebody who could give us opportunity to automate these kind of businesses. Right? See, each vertical for Reliance is a business in itself. So I think that's where the synergies came together, and they sort of came on board as a strategic investor, where they not only would give us capital, but they'll also give us business for their different verticals. And they would also give us technology from what they were working on. So we are the only company in India which has deployed a robot on 5G. And that would have not been possible had Reliance not invested in us, since we sort of became a part of that family or that group to that extent. So I think that's how the investment came together. There was no formal pitches or sort of reaching out to them with an investment banker. No, it didn't happen that way. We were working with a lot of projects with them. And then I think they felt that the time was right, that probably we could have a more closer collaboration, and we also felt that there were a lot of synergies that we could have with them, and that's how the investment came together.
How did you approach them? Because I think a lot of startups would like to kind of...
so again, as I said, they were already our customers. So we were meeting a lot of key decision makers, champions per se in the hierarchy, and we were working with them for our projects. So I think that's where they...
Did somebody from the Reliance team come and give a blank check to you?
No, it doesn't happen like that somebody gives a blank check. No, so obviously after working for 2.5 years, they felt that we could be a part of their family. And then they approached us and they said, would you be open to this idea? And we were more than glad. I mean, why would you say no? Because they tick all the boxes, right? You have a brand which is like the biggest in India, probably one of the biggest in Asia, one of the biggest in the world. Then they have different business verticals where you could deploy your automation solution. That was the biggest greed for us, because they would give you scale that you will not find anywhere, right, in the world. And we felt that this was an opportunity where we would get to automate all the... So they are entering into new energy, EV, battery manufacturing, right? So we felt that this is opportunity milega if we are a part of this group. And that's how we said we will be more than glad, and then subsequently the investment happened.
One consistent thing is that all these backers that you have found, you were vendors for them at first.
Vendors, or probably were working with them. We were working with Jalad sir in Asian Paints. Sangeet was working in Gale. Then we were working with Reliance. So that's a common thread. So probably our solutions have worked to that extent that people have gained confidence to have a sort of a more closer relationship with us.
Now I want to get a little bit into robots. So I have this question. We have been working on automation for a long time now. Factories, they get some new machine, they get automated a little more. So at what point do you call a machine a robot? Is there a line?
See, so robot is also essentially a machine. I'll just give a practitioner's perspective. So robot is also a machine that is more intelligent. So what does a machine do? It automates repetitive tasks, right? But it cannot handle any variability, correct? It cannot take any feedback from its environment. So let's say there is a machine that cuts tapes, and instead of tape you put your finger. It will cut your finger, right? Or if there's a fridge, you go inside the fridge, it will still continue to do what it is doing, right? It cannot differentiate that the environment has changed. To that extent, robots have that autonomy or intelligence to understand the environment, and to be able to have a perception that helps them to understand what is the environment and what do I need to do to adapt to this environment. right? And that's where, so obviously you sacrifice a little bit of speed, you sacrifice a little bit of agility, but you get a lot of flexibility, right? When you're working with a robot, which is sort of an intelligent machine, which can make sense of the environment. That's how I would like to put it.
As a robotic startup, where do you think the biggest use cases of robots will be there in the next 10-15 years? Will it be as workers in a manufacturing, as robotic workers in a manufacturing company on the factory floor? Do you think there'll be humanoid assistants that people will have in 10 years?
So robots are going to become more prevalent. If you ask me, we have not even automated 1 or 2% of the market that is there if I'm talking about India, right? So there could be robots. So they will be everywhere, right? And it is not necessary that the robot always has to be in a humanoid form, correct? I feel that there are many applications where robotics can be used apart from industry and warehouse automation where we are already present. Robots can be used in hospital. So today we are using robots to perform the surgery. But apart from that, there are many other applications in hospital and healthcare where you could use robotics. You could use robotics for as simple a task as cleaning your home or your airports or your railway stations, right? Something like a manual scavenging. I think that should be the task that should be automated with a lot of rigor, with a lot of intent, and with a lot of vengeance, especially in a country like India and the kind of history that we have had. So any job that you can think of can and will be automated in next 10 years is how I would like to see. Just like everybody wants to aspire to have a car, everybody will have a robot in next 10 years in one form or the other. And I'm not talking about the usual applications like defense, surveillance, security, any other odd application that you can think of, there will be a robot for it.
But as robots take over the factory floor, there is also a huge upswing in the sentiment in policy making across the world that everybody wants to onshore manufacturing in their countries and create jobs from manufacturing. I think probably it is also related to AI a lot, that AI will take away a lot of these white collar jobs, maybe lower level white collar jobs. Then people are thinking that will this mean that we need more manufacturing jobs across the world? So you are saying that you will bring in robots which will also kind of put an end to that. So how do you see that panning out?
So multiple questions in that question. So I'll try to touch one by one, and if I miss anything, you can probably add. So first, about the onshoring, right? A lot of onshoring discussions that are going on, especially in the West, have stemmed from their experience and over-dependence on China, right? There has been a lot of over-dependence on China, and China has sort of become the factory for this world. And that's where now they want to secure themselves, and that's where earlier it was China plus one. A lot of companies wanted to come to India because there's a democracy, sort of stable policy making, no knee-jerk reactions. It makes more sense for West to align with India to that extent. So earlier it was China plus one. Now with President Trump coming in, he wants to have onshoring. He wants to secure his own supply chain. And then one of the outcome is to create jobs. Obviously, every country has to create jobs for its people. But what kind of jobs do you want to create? So today in the West, people are just not turning up for jobs in factories and warehouses, right? Because you don't want to create the 3D jobs, what I call the 3D jobs, which is dull, dirty, and dangerous, right? So in manufacturing, you don't want to create jobs where you have to lift heavy weight constantly. You have to move for, let's say, if you have to walk for 15 kilometers a day in warehouse, would you do that job? You won't, right? So if anybody has to walk for 15 to 16 kilometers in an 8-hour shift, would definitely not want to do it. It's not healthy, right? So you don't want to do job that is dull, which is repeatable. If my entire day is just to pack 4 carton boxes by standing at a place, you would not want to do that job. Where's the growth in that job? Where's the learning in that job? So robotics is automating the 3D jobs, right? Dull, dirty, dangerous. Nobody wants to build those kind of jobs, right? And that's where robotics will come into the picture, where they will eliminate all these low-level jobs and they will create more high-end jobs which will be more safe, more secure. ऐसा नहीं है कि jobs खत्म हो जाएंगे. This is what every technological revolution changes the way we were working earlier. So when computers came in, there was huge protest in India, right? That all these jobs will get eliminated. All these officers, associations, etc. came up in arms. If somebody would have said at that time, 20, 30, 40 years back when all these protests were happening, ये बॉस क्या प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हो, 40 साल बाद सबके हाथ में कंप्यूटर होगा और वो इतना छोटा सा होगा, which is our mobile today. People would have laughed off. क्या बात कर रहे हो तुम? और उस मोबाइल से ज़्यादा जॉब बनेगा, right? So if you have 60 to 70 apps on your phone, those are 60 to 70 companies. Each company is almost employing 100, 200, 500,000 people, right? And then to maintain these servers, you also need an infrastructure companies, cloud companies. फिर वहाँ पे भी आपको employees चाहिए. So what happened essentially कि जो बाबू उस टाइम पेपर में भरने का काम कर रहे थे, now computers have automated that task, has created new business models, new economic models, new productivity models. जो एक ट्रांजैक्शन करने में आपको 4 दिन लगता था पहले शायद, मतलब I have not done it but I have read it. आज आप वो ट्रांजैक्शन 30 सेकंड में कर लेते हो बैंक में, गूगल पे के साथ 1 सेकंड में कर लेते हो. इट हैज क्रिएटेड अ न्यू इकोनॉमी, right? And that's what is going to happen with robotics and automation as well. Jobs are going to be created, new business models will be created, right? New economy will be created, new types of high paying jobs are going to be created for the people. Now, can I predict the exact nature of the job? Probably not. That will be my view. I cannot predict and say that this is how it's going to turn out, right? Abhi OpenAI को आए हुए 2 साल 2.5 साल हो गया, right? Have companies all fired their marketing teams? There is a Google tool that I saw 6 months back where you could do a podcast on our own, but still we are sitting and doing a podcast, right?
Yeah.
So obviously the productivity will increase. It will take time to completely eliminate the jobs the way they are existing right now, but then again newer jobs will be created, right? So with ChatGPT and AI, we have newer jobs. You need good prompt management. You need more jobs have been created, more productivity have been created. You can create your own AI agent today, and you can automate something that was. So if let's say in HR, if you have to send an engagement mailer, somebody comes up, it's a small company, they don't use any software, somebody comes up and somebody sends a mail every day to the candidate, oh, know this about us, know that about us, how unproductive it is. Now that person today has the opportunity to create an AI agent on their own, a small AI agent that can solve their problem, use a co-pilot and run a small automation script that increases the productivity of the individual. So everybody can have their own little software which can solve their problem. That's how I see it. And then once that productivity gets unlocked, huge amount of growth will get unlocked and there will be newer jobs that will get created. The job in manufacturing or factory is only 200 years old. हमारी इतनी पुरानी civilization में सिर्फ 100 या 150 साल पुराना ही है ये. क्या फैक्ट्री में जाके 8 घंटे 10 घंटे काम करो, और पहले शायद 12 14 16 घंटे होता था. And that's why we had people like Jyotiba Phule etc. who did all those who forced the Britishers to go for all those reforms. कि भाई पहले तो प्रेग्नेंट लेडी को भी ब्रेक नहीं मिलता था. तो ये तो पूरा फैक्ट्री का जॉब ही ओनली इज 200 years old, राइट? इट कैन अगेन चेंज. Earlier it was very different, now it is very different, but you will continue to have more jobs. I don't see it, I don't visualize it like an apocalypse, जहाँ पे जॉब ही नहीं होगा और लोग घर पे बैठे होंगे और सोच रहे होंगे कल क्या करना है.
Because we have a lot of these low skilled people and who also get probably very less pay. And today we are looking at a China plus one opportunity because people want to diversify away from China. There is also the fact that today I think China's labor force is becoming uncompetitive in terms of pay.
Yes.
But now when robots come in, then it seems that our opportunity is dented or diminished there, because a human being cannot compete on cost terms with a robot.
God has not created a human being to compete with another creation of human being.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we are meant to do jobs that require subjective judgment, more analytics, right? There is more subjectivity, there is more emotional decision making, right? There is more dexterity if we have to use both our hands. Is there a robot who can still... So I remember Virender Sehwag and VVS Lakshman. for having their good hand-eye coordination. Is there a humanoid robot which can mimic that hand-eye coordination today?
What about those Instagram reels where they show the playing tennis?
Yeah, so tennis in a limited environment.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
They will play tennis. ऐसा नहीं है they'll not play tennis, but in a limited environment, right? A lot of videos that you see are of table tennis where you need limited reach, correct?
Yeah.
But then again, you see there's a lot of subjectivity in table tennis game. You can handle a grip differently. I'm not saying that robots will not catch up. They will definitely catch up. They have to catch up. Correct? That's why there is talk of AGI. But then again, it will unlock huge amount of productivity that will create new jobs. Obviously, people have to skill up. Right? People have to reskill themselves. So if I have done an MBA and I say today, no, I don't want to learn about AI because I am an MBA. It's not going to be like that. You constantly have to unlearn and relearn. You have to evolve. राइट एंड एवोल्यूशन तो बहुत पुराना, मतलब चार्ल्स डार्विन ने तो कब से एवोल्यूशन के बारे में बोल के रखा है, इफ यू डोंट इवॉल्व यू विल बिकम एक्सटिंक्ट. सो एवरीबडी हैज टू इवॉल्व. प्रॉब्ली सम पीपल विल हैव मोर opportunities to evolve. Some people who would not be that fortunate will not have those kind of opportunities to evolve, but I think that's where government and industry has to play a role to get people to learn these new skills so that they can benefit from it. Why do we need a labor intensive model to compete with China? Why can't we have robots? Why can't we build robots faster? Why can't we build robots that are more efficient, more intelligent than them, right? And compete on that. That is also going to create new economic models for us.
How do you do that then?
Like we have done.
Yeah.
We build robots. We export it to the world. We have customers in Australia. We have customers in Singapore. We have customers in Europe, Middle East, US. So you focus on building solutions, right? You focus. See, there is a concept of continuous improvement in Japan. Kaizen, correct? So you have to continuously improve, right? Small improvements, and then you make a technological breakthrough. You have to compete on what's best. We are not living in 60s or 70s where we can have a protectionist regime और दुनिया में कार बन रहा है और मैं यहाँ एक स्कूटर चला रहा हूँ और उस स्कूटर का वेटिंग टाइम भी 2 साल का है. अनफॉर्चुनेटली द वर्ल्ड डजंट वर्क लाइक दैट टुडे, राइट? तो यू हैव टू कम्पीट. जब अभी जैसे मान लीजिए मेरा बेटा है, मुझे उसको स्विमिंग सिखाना है, तो मुझे पानी में तो फेंकना पड़ेगा ना. मैं कैसे उसको बोलूँ नहीं तुम तो पानी में भी मत जाओ, कहीं भी मत जाओ, बस घर पे ही बैठो और तुम स्विमिंग सीख जाओगे. इट डजंट वर्क लाइक दैट. इफ वी हैव टू बिकम China +1, if we have to become globally competitive, automation and robotics is just not about cost. It's about efficiency, it's about reliability, it's about accuracy. There are so many hidden costs. How will you ensure quality if you are having only manual processes? These are hidden costs in business, rework costs that people don't measure. They can't measure, right? तो बोलते कि अच्छा ठीक है, solution क्या है, 10 आदमी और डाल दो. But that's not the solution, right? That's where you have to automate if you want to compete globally.
So can you take us through how you compete with Chinese, Japanese or American robotics companies on one of these axes? Let's say how you make robots cheaper or more efficient, faster compared to them. If you can take me through an anecdote of how you guys did R&D,
Sure.
what kind of materials, how did you get from somewhere,
Sure.
and how did you guys make that happen?
Sure. So I'll probably share my journey and how we sort of did it to some extent, to whatever extent we have been able to do it. So first, we understood that if we want to make a robot, we need to have an ecosystem. There need to be a set of suppliers, there need to be a set of manufacturers who can give me those components. And so that's why we built our own manufacturing facility. We could have gone to China, we could have shared our designs, and we could have said तुम मैन्युफैक्चर करके दे दो. बहुत सारा D2C स्टार्टअप है जो अब पता चल रहा है कि चाइना में तो मैन्युफैक्चर करके ला रहा है, करेक्ट? बहुत सारा स्टार्टअप है जो टीवी पे आता है और बोलता है कि हम तो मेक इन इंडिया है और चाइना से मतलब सामान ले रहा है, करेक्ट? We don't want to do that because that's the easy route out. We want to go the hard route out. We spent almost 15% of our revenue on R&D, right from our inception. कि जितना पैसा है as a discipline, we have to spend this much on R&D, right? And then we sort of got the right people on board, and that's why we built our own manufacturing facility. बहुत सारी चीज़ें हमने खुद build कर ली. हमने अपने खुद का टूल रूम बिल्ड किया, हमने अपना मशीन शॉप बिल्ड किया, हमने अपनी डिज़ाइन टीम बिल्ड करी. वी बिल्ट आवर ओन R&D कंट्रोल्स टीम, वी बिल्ट आवर ओन सॉफ्टवेयर टीम, वी बिल्ट आवर ओन एम्बेडेड टीम. And we have an electronic manufacturing facility in Bot Valley where we build our own control cards, where we manufacture our own control cards. So we built the entire process from the scratch. There were a lot of failures, there were a lot of learnings. The product takes its own time to get stable, but we kept on moving towards that path. And since we were able to build this factory, we were able to scale our product fast. We were also able to incentivize other vendors to supply us items. We were able to give them scale, and then you obviously bring the benefit of being on scale.
But how did you make this decision of not taking the easy way out, go and get these components from China or some other country and build your robots? So, I mean, it must have helped you business-wise also. So, I mean, what was the framework of making the decision?
Casually बताऊं तो जब 10th 12th पढ़ते थे तो गाइड्स आती थी और कुंजी आती थी. तो एक तरीका था कि you could read those kunji and go and regurgitate your answer. And then the tough way was you probably prepare for full year. This was not the time when we would go to Kota and prepare. So you would prepare for full year. You would want to perform good in exams. You would want to learn for the learning process. So I think that's the rational way to do. Every parent wants their kids to go through that way. So somehow we wanted to go that way, right? We were also users of automation. We had worked with all the who's who company of warehouse automation and robotics during our time at Asian Paints. We knew what kind of problems you would face from China if you start importing from China, right? So ऐसा नहीं था कि हम इस इंडस्ट्री में एकदम पहली बार आए और हमको कुछ पता ही नहीं था. We had faced problems while we were at our earlier companies with products that were imported from China. We didn't want to repeat those mistakes. We wanted to do new mistakes. And we knew that there are...
What kind of problems were these?
So, see, there are issues of reliability. I'm not talking about today. China has now leapfrogged into a very different state today. But 2010, right, there was this proverb, 2010 to 15 का आप decade है, Chinese माल है. Correct? चलेगा चलेगा. पर चला तो चांद तक, नहीं तो रात तक. Correct? So there was a lot of questions around reliability. There was a lot of question around when you are using those components, you also need support from the OEM, right? See, I'm not talking about a global giant जिसका हम component ले रहे हैं और उसका manufacturing facility चाइना में है, वो एक अलग ball game है. I'm talking about having local component suppliers from China, correct? तो you would need a support from the OEM. You would want to use that component in different ways, in different forms. You would want to do your own integration with that component. So language was a big barrier, still is, but at that time it was a huge barrier. What do I do when I need support? What do I do when I need customization? And then will this product run for the industrial ruggedness that it is made for? I didn't want to completely depend on China because obviously there's a certain lack of confidence. वहाँ कुछ भी हो सकता है. Correct? That is, and आज का बात नहीं है ना, ये तो शुरू से है. We've always known China can do anything. Correct? So tomorrow if China announces that I have a colony on Mars, I won't be surprised. They can do it. So we didn't want to deal with that uncertainty. And second, we wanted to use the best components. We didn't want to compromise on cost in the initial stages. See, first it is important to build your product and run it. Once you have built your product, you can work on cost optimization. You can work on enhancing more features. So all those exercises or activities can come later. So our first idea was to build the product, right? Once you build the product, you run it, then you can optimize for cost, optimize its supply chain, build its supply chain. So again, when you want to go with the best doesn't come from one country, it comes globally. And that's where we were sourcing our components from, right? Because we already had worked with automation, we knew who provides which best part and who provides best support. क्योंकि हम तो user थे, तो हम तो पूरा support का journey देख चुके थे. तो all those learnings we implemented. Second, you have to understand that in robotics, software plays a very important role. So your hardware, low-level software, and then enterprise-grade software. And then I think in India, लोग पहले software engineer बनते हैं, फिर decide करते हैं life में क्या करना है, right? तो वो that comes naturally to us. I'm also a software engineer, a non-practicing software engineer. तो वो 3 idiots वाली कहानी तो सही है. पहले engineering कर लो, फिर decide कर लो क्या करना है, correct? तो that also helped us because India has a good background on software, and we were very clear from beginning that we want to have complete control on product. That can come with hardware, controls and embedded, and software. And all these 3 things have to be done in-house. And that gave us a lot of flexibility to build new features for our customers, and that became a differentiator for us when we were quoting solutions to customers. क्योंकि अगर आप चाइना से ले रहे थे, आप फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी कैसे कराओगे? आप रोबोट तो लेके आ गए, उस पर अपना ठप्पा मार दिया, बहुत लोग करते हैं, फिर उसके बाद फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी कैसे कराओगे? हाउ विल यू गो बैक टू दैट वेंडर एंड देन से कि हाउ विल यू गो बैक टू चाइना एंड से अच्छा मेक दीज चेंजेस only for one project. But if I have control on the entire product, hardware, embedded, controls and software, I can make changes to accommodate the request of the customer. And then COVID happened. तो 2016 में 17 में हम लोग चालू हुए, 17-18 में पेस पकड़ा, 19 में तो कोविड आउटब्रेक ही हो गया, तो उसके बाद तो फिर सवाल ही पैदा नहीं होता, right?
उसके बाद डोकलाम and everything happened, right?
So not डोकलाम, but in general, मतलब obviously that was a factor for country itself. बट अभी कोविड है, लॉकडाउन है, तो आप सामान कहाँ से मंगाओगे? वी नो अ लॉट ऑफ customers who bought automation from China and there was lockdown and the support manuals were written in Chinese and they could not send engineers from China. So that's why a lot of companies which are probably hedging their supply chain, somehow since we had experience of working with many vendors, our supply chain was hedged क्योंकि हम clear थे कि यार हमको बेस्ट कंपोनेंट यूज़ करने हैं तो आपका डाइवर्सिफिकेशन ऑटोमेटिकली हो गया, राइट? एंड देन ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम यू रिड्यूस योर कॉस्ट, यू ऑप्टिमाइज योर सप्लाई चेन, यू बिल्ड फॉर स्केल, एंड देन वी ऑलवेज हैड द एज ऑफ सॉफ्टवेयर. सो वी वर बेटिंग बिग ऑन सॉफ्टवेयर. वी फेल्ट कि पूरा मेरे लिए हर हार्डवेयर एक सॉफ्टवेयर है, राइट फ्रॉम डे वन वी वर वेरी क्लियर कि मेरा सॉफ्टवेयर बहुत फ्लेक्सिबल होना चाहिए, कॉन्फिगरेबल होना चाहिए. आई शुड बी एबल टू डिप्लॉय इट ऑन क्लाउड, आई शुड बी एबल टू डू अ डिप्लॉयमेंट ऑन प्रेम. माई सॉफ्टवेयर शुड बी द डिफरेंशिएटर इन ऑल माई सोल्यूशन. So these were some of the factors that helped because software is typically strength. तो we should play on our strength ना. तो जैसे इंडिया में पिचेस आप स्पिन के लिए बनाते हो, ऑस्ट्रेलिया में आप फास्ट बॉलिंग के लिए बनाते हो, तो हमारा स्ट्रेंथ सॉफ्टवेयर है, तो उस पे we should play and that helped us.
In the robots you sell, what's the domestic value addition? So what's happening nowadays in electronics, high-end manufacturing is a lot of these companies in India are doing assembling.
No, so 60 to 70% of what we build in our robot is built in Botverse. Is manufactured in Botverse. That's where I said we have our own embedded, we have our own electronic manufacturing line. So we are manufacturing the control cards. Complete mechanical assembly manufacturing is happening in our own machine shop, right? And so essentially there are some specialized components, right? Like a sensor. We don't want to build a sensor. There is a scanner. We don't want to build a scanner. राइट. सो जो बहुत स्पेशलाइज्ड कंपोनेंट्स हैं जिसमें हम लोगों को नहीं घुसना है, वी ओनली बाय और प्रोक्योर दोज आइटम्स and then rest of the manufacturing is completely done in-house.
Are there people in India who make those items that you don't want to do yourself? Are there people in India or do you have to get it?
We are seeing a lot of startups in India who are manufacturing their own motors, their own actuators, right, their own controllers. So now we are seeing a lot of startups, a lot of companies, even some established companies are also now entering into this domain. So we are seeing a lot of Indian companies coming up and indigenizing these components. Today, we know there are more than 50-60 robotic companies in India. So now you have demand, right? When I say robotics, I'm talking only about industrial robotics and warehouse automation. अगर मैं ड्रोन और ये सारी चीज़ें जोड़ दूँ तो और ज़्यादा है. So the demand is there and we are also seeing a lot of downstream component makers.
And what percentage of your sales happens in India versus outside?
So today our revenue breakup is almost 60% domestic, 40% outside India. In next 12 to 18 months it's going to change. It probably will be 60% outside India and 40% in India.
Wow.
And because international expansion, because we have already proven our solutions in India and that's why we went global. And again, the demand for automation in West, the triggers are very different. The demand for automation in India is primarily to scale their business, right? So if you want to do a 24-hour delivery, I'm not talking about 10-minute delivery, but just a Lenskart talks about 24-hour delivery, or if you want to do a faster delivery, you have to go for automation. There is no other way, because उसको logistics का time और distance भी travel करना है, customer के पास भी पहुंचना है 24 घंटे में, correct? तो इस तरीके से बहुत सारा business model है. When you are building huge factories for electronics or solar or new energy, you cannot, because of safety and compliance and quality reason, you cannot have manual processes. So in India, the companies are going for automation to scale up fast. In the West, people are just not turning up for factories and warehouses to do those kind of jobs, and that's why they have to go for automation.
People are not turning up for these factory jobs, and yet the heads of states of those countries want
Because
more
these
manufacturing.
jobs are very harsh,
Yeah.
right? Because unless you go for automation, these jobs are not very easy to do. It would be easier for me to work at a McDonald's, which has a more, then this is just my understanding, I could be completely wrong. Work at a McDonald's or work at a mall, which is more comfortable for me than to work in a warehouse where I'm responsible. I have to do a lot of manual tasks, right? So again, they are also going for automation because they have to make these warehouses or factories more attractive for people to turn up to work.
How long before you think that job in McDonald's or that salesman's job in a mall gets automated and is done by humanoid?
Not very far, but then again, the call will probably be with business, the end business of what they want to automate and where do they want to keep the human touch, right? I don't know how people would want to perceive it. Some people would be, so there are different types of people, right? Some people, when you go to a mall or when you go to a shopper's stop or a lifestyle, you would want somebody to assist you with your shopping. So the sales guy comes and you say, "Acha, mujhe ye nahi, ye dikhao, ye nahi, ye dikhao." And then there are some people who are like, "Leave me on my own. I'm going to figure it out," right? So that's where the businesses will have to take a call on where it will make more business sense for them, right? But probably a drive-through where you have zero human interaction, why should there be a human doing that job?
You guys are building humanoids, right?
Yes.
So what use cases you are building them for? Anything
All
like
use
this?
cases that you could think of, not only warehouse automation, but security, surveillance, any use case where any human would do that job, I can have that use case and a humanoid can do that job. The benefit would be if you are doing automation with special purpose machines or robots which have limited capability, there you have to design the process in a certain way and then you have to adhere to that design principle. With a humanoid, I can just drop in a humanoid and he can perform the job in the same way that a human was doing earlier. So probably it will give a big push to RAS, robot as a service, right? I can use humanoids for a certain duration. Like, to give you an example, probably abhi Kumbh happened, right? There would be huge rush at airports, I'm assuming, after watching all the footage that's there. Why would you want to build fixed infrastructure at airports which is not going to get utilized to that extent after the event is over? And there are many events like that happen, correct? So you can have a fleet of autonomous mobile robots which can completely automate your baggage handling as compared to a fixed conveyor system that we see in the airports. And this could be deployed on a RAS model, a robot as a service model. So you use it for 2 months here and then you give it back to the company. And the company in turn can send these robots after they have been utilized in, let's say, Allahabad or Kumbh, to some other airports where there would be some demand for some reason whatsoever, right? So if there is an event, if there is something, there would be huge demand, correct? In small cities or even in big cities or big airports. So these robots can be deployed elsewhere, or these robots can be then customized and used for a completely different use case. So applications, the possibilities are endless. As I've said, we have not even automated 1 or 2% of factories and warehouses today in India. There's still a very long way to go.
And these humanoids that you are building, the IP you are building out of India?
Completely. So we have already built a robotic quadruped. So the journey you see, first robots that can move on wheel, then we have quadrupeds, robotic dogs, now biped robots which will be humanoid. So complete IP is ours. All these we have built in-house. We are manufacturing it in-house.
What time frame do you think it will take you to build these humanoids?
Probably by the end of this calendar year.
You'll have a humanoid robot.
Yeah.
And
so we already have a dog. The dogs have performed a synchronized dance on Valentine's Day at an event called Logimat in Mumbai. We already have that capability to a very large extent. We just need to extend it to humanoid. Obviously, there will be different challenges because of form factor and because of other applications. But all of this is being done in-house.
And by the end of this calendar year, when you make those first humanoids, what will be the first use cases?
So the first use cases, obviously for us, so if you ask my personal opinion, the use cases of warehouse automation would be more comfortable for us because there we already have an ecosystem of our products. So today the picking process is completely happening manually,
Yes.
right?
In
picking.
e-commerce logistics.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Because when you, again, dexterity. So
Yeah.
if you have to pick the item, the hand-eye coordination and fingers have to work. So if I have a humanoid, that will be the first task that I would like to target, because I understand the process inside out. There will be a lot of learning curve with this product, right? Which comes with any industrial product. You learn, you take feedback from the environment. So I already understand this process to a large extent. The other automation systems are in my control. So I would like to, so this would probably be the first use case where I would like to deploy. But then again, if another use case comes up and if the customer is ready to take a bite, I can deploy on any use case that I want. That's how I want to build the product.
Aren't you scared that these robots might one day take over these factories and then the world?
तो ये तो टर्मिनेटर में होता था. So if अगर ऐसा होगा तो there would be John Connor somewhere who's going to help us, because I remember John Connor was a survivor. So I think he'll help us.
No, because around the world, people like Masa-san, Sam Altman are talking about AGI. So if there is AGI and then there's a humanoid,
I genuinely can't predict the future of what's going to happen. But obviously there's a lot of safety systems that you build into robots, right? There are ways and means. So see, we also make our own cobots, collaborative robots. So what you do is the material that you use in a collaborative robot should be such that if there is some impact with human or somebody, it doesn't hurt the human, right? You design the cobot in such a way that it can work with humans side by side. Then the speed at which it operates has to be different. The intelligence mechanism, safety mechanism has to be way higher. You control of the speed of the mobile robot at which it is moving, so that unfortunate incidents might happen. You can never deny. I remember, I think it was Uber, they had a fatal crash with a pedestrian in US sometime back, long time back, I don't know. I don't remember the timeline exactly. Nobody wants those kind of unfortunate incidents. But I think when there will be maturity to build guardrails, that risk always remains, correct? But there will be guardrails built, I'm pretty sure, to ensure that they do not go rogue. But I don't know if it's going to be rogue or they can think on their own. It can definitely happen, but I think there will be guardrails. People who are building these technologies are doing with the right intent. At least that's what I would like to believe. There are a lot of safety compliances, safety audits that we do for our industrial machinery and robots. Like EU has built up a body to govern AI, right? Eventually governments are going to catch up with the right laws or probably regulations that will ensure that this kind of a thing doesn't happen and it doesn't go out of control. But if it happens, I wish there is a John Connor out there.
Last night, I think Dara Khosrowshahi, Uber CEO, announced that now you can book a Waymo on Uber in Austin.
Yeah,
in the US.
The self-driving cars.
Would you be comfortable booking such a ride?
Yes, why not? See, every change that happens, change is the only constant. And whenever change happens, as humans, we are not very comfortable with it. So I'll give you an example. The question that you exactly asked me today. There is a movie called Naya Daur. I think there's a race in the end between a cart and a vehicle or a motor vehicle. If I'm not wrong, I think it's that same movie where Dilip Kumar is riding a cart. तो वो movie essentially क्या दिखा रहा था उस जमाने में? कि नहीं cart ही better है. If you go into the Mercedes museum in Stuttgart, I think there's a horse, and I think there is a statement from Kaiser below. There's a statue of a horse and a statement from Kaiser, I think Kaiser Wilhelm or someone below the horse, where he said that automobile will never be able to compete with horses or something like that. So this is the exact question that you just now asked. I would be completely comfortable because I think I'm a student of change. And I would want to be a part of this change rather than stand against this change. A lot of movies that you see reflect the time period of the culture of time period at that time. And today when you see and you say, oh my God, how toxic. Kaise ye chal gaya movie, right? So that's how change happens and everything evolves. So I would be 110% comfortable. I wish if I go to Austin or US next time, I get a cab which is completely self-driven. And Tesla is already doing it. Their cars are completely self-driven. I've seen it when I went to US a couple of years back. I saw people were playing on their phone and the car was driving it. on its own. So that's completely fine. That's how the future is going to be.
Thank you so much, Satish. I think you are not only standing with change but driving it. So on that note, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast, and thanks for a great discussion.
Thank you.
Look forward to more in the future.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.